Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today we're going to be talking to Derek Dombeck, who is the founder of Best REI Funding, a national hard money lender. He's also done over 600 creative real estate deals over his career, and he's the host of the Circle of Trust Mastermind and Generations of Wealth event. We're going to be talking about how you can buy properties that cash flow in today's market using subject to financing, how you can do deals using other people's money, and the best creative real estate deal structures for today's market. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. If you're on Facebook, make sure you join us on our Facebook group, Real Closers. Hit that like button so other people just like you can find this video. And as always, if you like money and you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. Want to welcome on Derek Dombeck to the Founders Club podcast. Thank you so much for being on. It's a true honor.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So you've obviously been involved in a lot of deals over many years and are a very seasoned investor. You're also lending hard money and doing all of that. So that's very cool. I want to definitely get into all of that. But why don't we I like to start with everyone on just kind of how they got into the real estate business.
Well, I think by accident, like most people. So I came from a construction background. And shortly out of high school, I bought my first property and built it, remodeled it, added on to it, and kind of learned that I could build equity with my own two hands, sweat equity. So moving forward, it wasn't until about age 27 or so, I kind of got the investor bug. My wife and I were introduced to a couple of different education platforms, and we started traveling and going to boot camps and stuff, just like most people do. And back then, everything that we learned was to buy and hold, have rental properties. The magic number was have 100 doors or 100 rental units and cash flow $100 a door, and you'd make $10,000 a month and you'd live the great life. Ironically, I still hear that same pitch today with the same numbers. And not exactly the same profitability. But what we did back then was all bank financed. And so back then was 2003, 2004 when we started. 2007 when the markets crumbled, we were under that pile of rubble. And it really destroyed us in a lot of different ways, financially especially. But we didn't have any backup plan. We were bank financed on everything. We had no control over our business because the banks made all the decisions for us, and they decided they were shutting their doors and not going to lend to us anymore. So what that looked like was about a $4 million portfolio that went to $1 million in 6 months as far as value on paper. And so we had to learn how to get creative or quit. It was our two options, and quitting was not an option. So we started, doing something I should have done early on, building a network. That was mistake number one. I was a closet investor. We didn't tell anybody what we did or how we did it because God forbid somebody have an opinion that hurt our feelings, right? That doesn't happen anymore. I don't care about other people's opinions as much as I did back then. But we took on business partners. We did whatever we had to do because we were robbing from Peter to pay Paul for a long time. And eventually I met my current business partner. His name is Jeff. And the interesting part about Jeff, two different things. He had dabbled in lending, which was a new idea to me. I just thought if you weren't a banker or some kind of financial advisor, you wouldn't have the knowledge to be a lender, right? I was just a construction worker with a PhD, a public high school diploma. How could nice. How could I ever be a lender, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting to me is he had never used a bank for any one of his investments. He'd been buying and holding, flipping property, never used a bank once. So coming out of what I came out of, it was very intriguing, and I wanted to learn more. So we started our business in around 2012. and we were flipping properties. Still, I was trying to come out of a deficit, so I was looking for those chunks of cash. And then through that, we established our own RIAs. So he was running a RIA in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is where we're from. And I started another RIA about 100 miles away. And we started becoming, those people at the front of the room that by default, you're the knowledgeable one. Whether you have knowledge or not, it's just the way it works. And people start coming to us for advice on deals, looking for money, people that had money. So we raised private money for our own deals, and we got to a point where we had more money available than we had deals, and we started lending. And that grew organically over time to what is now dozen employees and 20 to 25 loans a month going out the door, still 100% privately funded. We don't take on institutional financing or backing of any kind at this point. Never say never, but there's something to be said about dealing with real people. And I take great joy in taking somebody's, cash or retirement account or their investment that they were getting 0.00 nothing in a bank CD, and now they're getting 9%, right?
Yeah.
Secured by real estate. Like it's really rewarding. So to date, love creative deal structuring. I love negotiating. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm really good at the kitchen table. And I love solving people's real estate problems. And along the lines, we grew a national presence, several masterminds that we now run. We run a conference every year. Again, wasn't something that I set out to do years ago, but when you start to open your mind and your doors to opportunity and possibilities, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, what a great story. Number one, because it sounds like you got really beat up in the 2008 housing crisis. So for you to come out of that and then really build a large privately funded hard money company, it's very impressive. Let me ask you this: what would you say was your biggest lesson from that last major housing shift, and kind of what lessons did you learn that maybe people can learn today for those people that are worried about the market and what it's doing?
There's a lot of lessons, but there's 2 or 3 major ones that I love to point out. First lesson: don't use your personal house to leverage against in any way, shape, or form, unless you absolutely have to. I see people on, all these forums and Bigger Pockets, and they all think that taking out a HELOC against their personal house is some brilliant investment strategy. If you're not willing to lose it, don't pledge it. I didn't lose my personal house, but I was damn close. To me, it's not worth the risk. And if you read the fine print on almost every line of credit, they're callable at any time. And if the bank feels like calling your line of credit due, and if it's against your personal property and you don't have the cash to pay it, say goodbye and you're homeless. So that's the first one. The second one is, I really think that people spend a minimal amount of time on learning how to actually interact with other people, right? We live in a society where you can go and say whatever you want with zero consequences. And when you're negotiating with a seller or a buyer or a banker or everybody else that we deal with in this industry, there's consequences to what you say and how you say it. And those consequences could simply be you didn't get the deal, or you didn't get enough deals to keep your family fed. So what I did 2007 through 2010, when I was trying to dig out, I learned how to talk to people and I studied it. I would record my phone calls and go back and listen to them. What did I say? What was the tone in my voice? What was their reaction? I would say 85% of my negotiations are over the phone because I work almost the entire state of Wisconsin. So I don't go and meet with a homeowner until I'm pretty sure we're doing a deal. So I had to figure out how to read body language just from what I could hear. And over time, you start to see patterns and you get better and better and better. And the best part or the best way, in my opinion, to practice negotiating is do it with your own people that you deal with every day. Your kids, your spouse, your friends. Try getting your kid to go to bed on time. If your kid doesn't go to bed on time, you lost that negotiation. Right? These are all
Right.
real life things that you can practice. So I feel like most people don't know how to actually have a social interaction that they can control without being manipulative, right? And lead people down a path that can help them and still benefit you financially, right? As long as you're helping people, there's nothing wrong with making money. I just don't want anyone taking advantage of bad situations. And that leads me to the third point. Learn how to deal structure creatively. Like, there is all the people right now that are freaking out about interest rates being at what I consider a normal level anyways.
Yeah, same.
Right. But if you're under 30 years old, you've never seen these rates. So there's some
Mhm.
panic in the streets. If I know how to creatively structure a deal, take over somebody's loan subject to use options or use leases or use a combination of any and all of the above, I don't care what rates are. Right.
So
So
let's break that down a little bit. Tell me more about what that would look like in today's environment.
okay. So right now I don't know the number. I'll just make one up. There's 2 million loans out there that are fixed rate loans at 2.5 to 3.5% interest.
Hmm.
And there's a certain percentage of those people that are going to have to move for whatever
Yep.
reason, job relocation, divorce, death, you name it, 1,000 different
Yep.
reasons. Okay. In a lot of areas in the country, the upper Midwest is one of them. I can still cash flow that property. It may not be a huge cash flow. It might be a break even, but I can cash flow that property even if they're 90 to 97% leveraged.
Mm.
So at a 2.5 to 3.5% interest rate.
Mm.
So if I can go and buy their property, take it subject to their mortgage, and then put somebody into that property on a lease with an option to purchase, I've got the ability to cash flow with none of my own money or very little of my own money. I'm not using my own
Mm.
credit. Now, the caveat to that is if you give somebody your word that you're going to make their payment for them, you damn well better make their payment for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very intrigued by what you're saying. I think that's kind of been picking up a little bit of steam in the real estate investing space right now, in terms of being able to do these subject to deals and kind of taking over, these mortgages that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old when rates were a lot lower. So let's maybe talk about how you're finding those types of deals, and we can kind of walk through that a little bit.
Well, you don't find a creative deal. Really, it comes from that conversation I talked to you about earlier. So our leads come in the same way that all leads come in. We've got direct mail, we've got social media, we've got Google AdWords, the same lead gen that everybody uses. The difference is how we talk to those people and open up their mind to the possibility of something other than a cash purchase,
Mm.
right? So the way
Yeah.
I put it to anybody is within a couple minutes, I try to get my little elevator pitch out. And the reason I do it this way is moving forward in that conversation, every question I ask after I get my elevator pitch out, they don't get offended by and they don't have a problem answering. So pretty much this is what I would say. Mr. Seller, we buy houses in multiple ways. All cash is not a problem, but it's typically our lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, we could look at taking over your debt payments if you have debt, or if you don't,
Mm.
make payments to you over time. Or in some cases, we just lease your property and we buy it at a future date using a thing called an option. I tell
Mm.
you all this just so you understand. I'm going to ask you questions that most people wouldn't ask you, and it's for me to try and come to a solution to help you. Is that okay? End pitch.
I like that.
So I just laid out that we have multiple ways to help them,
Mm.
and I'm asking their permission to ask more questions that may be a little intrusive. So now, as we move forward through that conversation, and I say, do you have debt on your property? Right. And if you listen to how I just said that one phrase, do you have debt on your property? I say it with the right tone. I'm not saying, what's your mortgage balance? What do you owe on your property? Right.
Yeah.
Like, how you say it, the words you use, the tone, all of that matters. And I'm very, very good at getting people to just open up. And the other thing I'm very good at is being vulnerable myself. If I'm dealing with somebody that's in foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, or bankruptcy, I've been there. I will sit there eyeball to eyeball with them and say, listen, I am not judging you. I have been there myself. That's how I know I can help you, because I went through it. Right. If I deal with somebody that it's an estate situation, I lost my father 15 years ago. I know exactly how that feels. There's nothing wrong with me being eyeball to eyeball with somebody and being vulnerable with them to help them, not to take advantage of them. So that's where I go back to saying what I said earlier. Learning how to talk to people is the key to this business. It's the way we raise money. It's the way we give out loans. Everything we do is people business. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the name of the game in real estate. And I just want to go back to one thing you just said, which I thought was really cool, was, and this is something that I'm a big fan of as well, is you're bringing a menu of options to the table. I think a lot of times realtors, investors, everyone, they come with their one pitch and they try to put everybody in that one box where, it's really easy to just create a couple of different options, and then you're coming with a menu instead of, do you want to hire me and do this? It's more like, which one of these options do you think is best for your situation?
Let me ask you this question. Would you ever, in today's declining market or leveling market, whichever one you're in currently, would you ever pay more than retail for a house?
I guess it depends on the terms.
That's the right answer. Most people would say no. Okay.
Right.
So if somebody wants, like in my market, $250,000 is kind of median. So if somebody wanted $250,000 for their house today, and they could take payments over time, might I offer them $300,000? Sure, depending on what my payment terms are, right? And if I can structure the deal at $300,000 with zero interest or very, very little interest, when you put that into an amortization schedule, that's better than going to the bank and getting a 5% interest rate with a 30-year fixed rate. So learning how to use a loan calculator is very important when you're creative structuring too. And what people don't think about is, let's just make the assumption that these people accept my $300,000 offer, and I'm going to make $1,000 a month payments until paid in full, which is a 0% interest rate. Okay. I know most of your listeners are going to say that's impossible. Nobody would ever do that deal. I'm not going to argue with anybody, but I've done these deals. So once you start making the payments, the point of this topic is, once you start making the payments and a year goes by or 2 years goes by, people's lives change. They were willing to take payments at the beginning. There's what we call the second bite of the apple, right? I call up the seller and say, well, listen, I'm very happy with what we have going on. I'm more than happy to continue the payments we're making, but I just sold another property. I've got a chunk of cash. I still owe you, $276,000 because I've been paying for 2 years, but I've got $200,000 cash right now. If you would take that as payment in full, we can be done. If not, no problem continuing to make the payments as is.
Ooh, that's nice. You go for a little discount and you get to pay it off.
You've just bought that property at less than the $250,000 that they originally wanted. Second bite of the apple. If they say no, it's no big deal. We just keep making the payments because we bought it and our payments were structured so that we cash flowed. Okay. We don't ever want our payments to be higher than what our cash flow is, obviously. So there's no downside to that. Now, what's the downside of paying more than what it's worth? If you have to sell, that's a problem. So I would negotiate some prepayment um, language in that agreement so that I could prepay it and get a discount, or that's all negotiable. But the point of that example really is just expand your mind. There are definitely ways. If I took the time to put that into a loan calculator and you bought it for the 250 using today's mortgage rates at a 30-year fixed, you're probably going to end up paying a total of 500 or more
or more.
right over 30 years.
Yep.
So you can get much better deals, and it puts more money into the seller's pocket, because if they sold it outright for 250, they're done and gone. Well, I can get them 300. I can get them 350. I can get them $1 million. I would give them $1 million for a $250,000 house today if the payment terms made sense and we could cash flow. Right?
I like that a lot. Yeah. So I agree. It's all about the terms. So, a lot of the listeners out there, they're in the trenches, they're doing deals every day. What tips do you have in terms of like how to recognize these types of deals when they come up, and kind of how to present them to the seller?
It's hard to give you any kind of set criteria because they are so case by case.
Right.
And so my answer to that would be, you have to bring up these conversations to every one of your sellers, and based on the answers they give you to your questions, lead them down these paths. Okay. Because the sellers don't know what they don't know. And when they're confused, their default is going to be, no, I don't want to do it that way. I just want your cash offer. And when your cash offer isn't high enough to clear their debt, they just automatically think it's dead, and the investor moves on and the seller moves on. So
can I ask one quick clarifying question there?
Sure.
For these types of sub 2 deals, are these deals that have a lot of equity, or does that not matter?
The answer is it depends. It's case by case. Okay. I've done them with zero equity. I've done them with a lot of equity where I then had to structure other parts of the deal. So I'll give you a case study real quick.
Okay, perfect.
Bought a property. The woman wanted $105,000 for the property. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. This was about 3 years ago, to give you kind of a timeline. She wanted $105,000 for the property. I needed to do about a $5,000 cleanup to make it rent ready. And she owed $67,000, I believe it was. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we took it subject to her first mortgage, $67,000.
Okay.
We gave her $10,000 cash.
Okay.
And she carried the remainder balance of, again, I'm kind of making the numbers up. I believe
like
it was
$40K or whatever it is.
No, it was like 16. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it amortized out to be zero interest payments for 6 years.
Okay.
So a total of $105,000. Now, I didn't want to use any of my own cash because it's against my religion. So I reached out to a friend of mine. I'm very nosy. I know what my friends have in their retirement accounts and in cash. And so I called up my friend and I said, hey, for 25% of the equity in this deal, in the future, when we sell it, I need $20,000 of your money. And we're going to do it out of his IRA, Roth IRA, as a participating note. Okay. So he got a 6% interest only payment on his $20,000 quarterly. And then someday in the future, when I decide to sell it, he gets 25% of the equity. Okay.
Okay.
So out of that $20,000, I paid the seller $10,000 cash.
Yeah.
I fixed up the property, and I had a little bit left for the carrying costs, right? Until I got somebody in on a lease option. Then I put somebody in on a lease option who gave me $5,000 down and started making monthly payments. So I'm into it with nothing out of my own pocket. So far, let's recap. We've used subject to. We've got a seller carryback second mortgage. We've got a participating note through a friend's IRA which is actually a third position note.
Mm.
Then we've got a lease and an option to my end users of the property. So this is stacking strategies. This is creative, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of stacking right there.
I've got nothing out of my pocket. The seller got exactly what they wanted because
Yep.
they were a little bit behind on the payments, which was what some of the cash was for. So I brought them current. I'm now fixing their credit as I make on-time payments. They got the move-out cash they needed, and they've got cash flow to the tune of about $200 a month coming in on that remainder equity in the property. And I bought a property that was basically at retail price. Okay. So we did the fix up, and I put lease option tenants in there, and their buyout price was $120,000. And ultimately, the first tenants failed. And then I had to put another set of tenant buyers in there. So in the end, it sold for about 127. Paid everybody off. We made total with our cash flow and our equity and everything. We made about $30,000 on that deal over a 2-year period of time. And everybody else got what they wanted. So
I love this. This is a great example. I have a couple questions on it. Number one, and I'm guessing you probably get this question and or hear this all the time. For the lady that sold the home, that agreed to carry back the second position, what is her guarantee that you're going to make the payments?
She doesn't have a guarantee, but she's in a second mortgage position, and she could foreclose out of second position or in second position, right? So if I drafted my note in second position and tied it to my performance on the first, she would have a right to claim default and foreclose against me and take the property back. Now, this comes back to the whole being ethical and moral, right? If I knew that I ran into some kind of financial stress and I couldn't pay her anymore, I should do the right thing and deed the property back to her. Right? That's what I should do. That's what I would do. Not everybody would maybe make the same decision.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's a good point. So it's secured by the property. And then the other question I have is this sounds like you probably need some sort of attorney support on creating these documents and structuring these types of deals. How do you go about handling that? Do you have attorneys that specialize in this types of transactions, or what do you do for that?
Early on, we had attorneys review our documents, tweak our documents that we got from other sources to make sure they were state specific for Wisconsin. Now we draft all of our own documents. We draft our own trusts. We draft our own leases and options and everything. But that's certainly not how we started out. And I will go back to talking about building your network. So early on, when I had zero network, I didn't have anybody to call. Now I have some of the highest, most well-renowned attorneys in the country are friends of mine, right? And they're not going to charge me $500 an hour to pick up the phone and say, what would you do? What should I do with this? Right? We're friends. So that's the whole point of building a network. Even if you think you're going to stay local to your own hometown and not get a national presence, I didn't necessarily believe at some point in my career I'd be as national as I am. But when I'll give you the example of COVID, right? Nobody saw that coming. A lot of people panicked. Those of us that had a network around the country, we were collaborating. You know, what are you seeing in Georgia? What are you seeing in California, Vegas, Chicago, all these different things? And we were helping each other because we're not competition to each other. So most of my network, 2020 was the best financial year they've had to date. And that's the part I think that everybody should grow that network as far out as they can. Doing podcasts like this, you and I get the luxury of getting to meet awesome people from all over the place and have great conversations. And if you ever need anything, you can reach out. If I need something, I can reach out. That's building a network, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I like bringing it full circle like that back to the network. I think that, anything you can do, attending events, pressing palms with people, going to the Chamber of Commerce, going to the real estate investing meetup groups, going to the Builders Association meetup groups, even going to realtor caravans, any of those types of things. And then obviously, as you grow your business, you can start paying your way into higher level masterminds. And then you're really meeting players from all around the country, which is just, to your point, a great way to be able to, meet attorneys that are highly specialized that you can now have on the dial to just contact if you have a quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about how you're kind of coming to your offer price on some of these subject to deals.
So anything that it's going to be creatively structured is 100% based on cash flow for me.
Okay, I like that.
The reason I got my butt handed to me in 2007, because I had cash flowing properties in Wisconsin and I was buying and building properties in Florida for appreciation. Well, appreciation looks really good on a spreadsheet and a balance sheet, but it doesn't feed your family. So if I'm doing anything, especially when I'm telling somebody I'm going to make your loan payments for you, or I'm going to make payments to you, I am not risking anything that does not truly cash flow. So that's just myself.
So just to kind of break that down a little bit, do you mean that you're looking at what the property will rent for and then trying to structure terms that will get you a payment that's less than that?
Correct. So in Wisconsin, we have fairly high property taxes. I can pay about 45% of the rents to any kind of debt payment. If I get to about 50%, I'm probably going to be breaking even. Anything above that, I'm losing. And I explain that to the property owner that I'm trying to buy from, and just say, listen, why would I want to take on more debt than this property can cover? That's risky for you as the seller, and it's risky for me. So let's structure the deal where we know that it's going to be successful. And, they may want a balloon payment. I'll speak to balloons a little bit. Balloons sneak up on you way faster than you can ever imagine. So in the event you do agree to any kind of balloon, always ask for an extension provision from day one, because everybody is happy with each other at that point. And the way I do that is I simply say, well, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, if we get to our 5-year balloon and something is going on beyond our control, like a war or COVID or a political election or something along those lines, and I can't pay this off, do you want the property back? And as soon as you ask, do you want the property back, shut up and let them answer.
Okay.
I don't care how long they sit there, how awkward silence is awesome for us. Almost always, unless they're an investor already, but almost always they're going to say, no, we don't want this property back. Okay, great. Why don't we figure out a way to build in an extension provision right now? And that way, neither one of us has to get nervous if and when that time comes. So then it's just a negotiation. Usually I'll offer to give them a chunk of cash, which comes directly off the principal that I own, and maybe a bump in the interest rate. If we agreed to 5%, maybe we go up to 5.5 or 6, right? But I've done this successfully 95% of the time when I agreed to any kind of a balloon. And often you can get that period of time doubled. So if you agree to a 3-year balloon, you can get 6. 5-year balloon, you can get 10. Pretty easy.
I love that.
Just by asking one question.
And that's a great just way to build in a little extra protection for yourself. And I like the idea that you're also giving up something should you not be able to perform. Like, okay, then the rate goes up a little bit, or whatever the payment terms are, maybe go up a little bit, or they get a little bit of cash or something. But that's a great tip.
Yeah.
What about what type of condition are these homes generally in? I'm guessing it also depends, right? There's probably a lot of scenarios where if it's a new house but they're in distress, that might be one scenario, whereas older flip type properties you might approach differently.
Yeah, I've found that if they need a lot of work, they don't fit into my model of taking them subject to or or any kind of seller financing, just because if I'm going to have, let's call it a $50,000 rehab after I take their property subject to, I might as well just buy it for cash, because I'm not going to be able to get that cash out of it without going and doing bank financing, which, as you know, as I've talked earlier, I don't do. So anything that ties up a larger chunk of cash, I'm not interested. You know, I do like bringing in my financial friends, using their small IRAs, things like that, because they don't.
Yeah, that was another great tip.
Yeah, they don't need the payments, especially if they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They
Right.
want it to grow. You don't have to make monthly payments to them. That just benefits all of us. So I would say my threshold, if it needs more than $10,000, maybe $15,000 worth of updating or work, I wouldn't do it in that way.
So then when you're meeting with a potential seller, are you presenting the creative option and then the hard money option? Is that kind of your two that you're mainly using?
So I'm kind of going with my elevator pitch, right? I don't tell them where the cash is coming from. I just tell them this is cash. This is what I'm willing to do in cash. Just like every
Right.
other cash buyer that ever approaches you, we're all going to be pretty similar. My next offer, actually, here I'll give you a quick case study. The numbers might blow your mind. I don't know, what market are you working in primarily?
San Diego,
San
Southern
Diego.
California. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, these numbers will blow your mind. So about 4 years ago, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The landlord was in his 70s. He owned the property for 6 years. He bought it for $55,000. He was leasing it for.
Wow.
Watching your face was priceless on that one.
Yeah.
He was leasing it for $650 a month, and he owned it free and clear. So he was putting in his pocket about $250 a month, true cash flow. But
Okay.
that did not pay him anything for his maintenance, his management, his headaches, anything like that. He had the same tenant for 6 years, didn't want to raise their rents. We've all heard that story from older landlords, right? So I said, I can give you $34,000 cash because this property needs about a $10,000 renovation. I can give you $34,000 cash, $55,000 at 5% interest with a 3-year balloon. He was adamant he wanted a 3-year balloon. We did get an extension out of that, but that's what he wanted, right? So $55,000 at 5% interest with a 3-year balloon, payment to be about $325 a month. Or I can give you $70,000, $325 a month, 0 interest, same 3-year balloon. Which one would you like?
I like that.
He took the $70,000, which on the surface looked like a worse deal because it's 0% interest. When you pencil them all out, that kept more money in his pocket because he would have tax savings. At the $55,000, that was his tax basis. He bought it for 55, sold it for 55. There'd be no capital gains. But collecting 5% interest, the interest portion of every payment is taxed at his ordinary income tax rate.
Right.
Versus taking $70,000, 0 interest. Now, I know there's some CPAs out there, and there's going to be some people out there saying, well, that you have to charge a certain amount of imputed interest. At that time, there were exceptions to the tax code. I'm not speaking to what the tax code is today because I'm not going to. We'll get into a political discussion. But at that time, he fell within the threshold that he could absolutely sell that property at 0%. For me, it was a wash, right? If he took the cash offer, fantastic. I fund it, I flip it, no big deal. If he takes the cash or the offer at $55,000 at 5% interest, I get to take a mortgage interest deduction on my taxes. If he takes the offer at $70,000, I don't get a mortgage interest deduction because I'm not paying interest, but my basis is higher in the property. So when I resell it, I pay less in capital gains.
Nice.
All of these things matter, right?
Yep.
So ultimately, 2 years and 2 months later, we sold the property. Again, I brought in a financial friend and gave her a percentage of the equity to use her money. So I had 0 money into it. That one we sold for $126,000 on a lease option. I net $45,000 in 26 months total with cash flow, equity, and my friend's IRA, her 25% equity in the property gave her a 42% annualized return in her IRA.
It's way better if she's getting anywhere else.
Yeah, I did another deal with her, which was supposed to be a 2-year deal, and it paid out in 3 months, and she had a 411% annualized return on that one. So
Can't be mad at that.
I took her 10 grand, and 3 months later she got 21 back. So
not bad. Yeah,
she likes doing deals with us.
Definitely.
But I'm not saying you give up that much equity to everybody, but she's a financial friend, and we do other stuff together, right? So
yeah, I like the financial friends. That's another great tip.
Yeah, and be nosy, know what they have.
So, and then one more question on this. The exit strategy, it sounds like, is generally you're just before the 3-year balloon comes up, you're either selling to a retail buyer or doing the lease option strategy.
I like lease options. I typically will give them a 1-year option with the right to extend for a 2nd year. There will be a predetermined price bump in year 2. The extension is 100% at my discretion, so I do not have to give them the 2nd year. As long as they're taking care of the property and doing what they are supposed to do, I'll give them that 2nd year. And, after the 2nd year, it's renegotiation time. They may have to exit. If we see huge appreciation like we've seen in the last few years, they might have to pay more for the property, or they exit and I sell it to somebody else retail. But I want at least 1 year less than what my balloon is to exit the property. So if I have a 3-year balloon, I'm not giving somebody more than 2 years because I want that buffer time, because a year goes by fast.
Yeah, especially if you got to switch someone else out and go to a new buyer, market the property, all that.
And when the markets go down and decline, right? We might give somebody, if we would have given somebody a lease option last year, January 1st, right? 2022, January 1st, rates were 3.5%, 4%. And their purchase price was full retail as of January 1st. And they wanted to exercise now, a year later, they may not be able to just because of interest rates. So we got to, as the investor, we've got to also try and have that crystal ball, what's going to happen when they exercise their option. And it can work both ways. We lock into a price and they see 20%, 30% appreciation. They gain that appreciation. That's their gain as long as they exercise their option. So it works both ways.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way. And then, I like the cash flow strategy where you're just reverse engineering the payment plan based on whatever's going to cash flow for you, and then building in that lease option buyer to kind of exit on the end. Are there any that you're holding for the long term, or do you generally always sell at the balloon?
What I typically do, anything I'm holding just straight options, which I'm not in possession of the property. And those are the ones I'm holding for equity. So right now I have an option on a cabin on several acres of land in northern Wisconsin, and I paid $4,500 for that option. So, and that's in my retirement account.
And how long is the option?
10 years.
Okay.
And I saved that person's property from a tax foreclosure. He was going to lose it. So I paid his, we came to an agreement. I paid his taxes for him. I've got 10 years to buy that property at, we have a purchase price set. So pretty cheap, $4,500 to potentially make $50,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
10 years.
And in the meantime, is he just holding it, or is it free and clear?
No, it's his property. I just have an option to purchase it. But so here's a friend of mine is doing this right now, right? Like, hurricanes hit Florida. There's tarps on houses down in Florida. So he goes around, knocks on doors, and if these people didn't have proper insurance, or they can't afford to put a new roof on their house, he says, okay, great. I will pay the $20,000 to replace the roof. And for that, I want the right to buy your property for the next, you name the number of years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. And you can structure it at today's market prices if that's what you all agree to.
Right.
So when you hold options on property, don't think that you have to be the one that exercises that option. If you structure it properly, an option is currency. Okay.
Mm.
So I can take that option on that piece of land with that cabin, and I can sell that to somebody. I can trade it to somebody. Somebody else might want that option, and I have no desire to own that property, right?
Right.
What happens most often, though, is the property owner comes back and tries to renegotiate to buy that option back. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
And so
It's like a wholesale deal for the future.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. But again, you can use that option as currency today. You don't have
Yeah.
to wait. I like doing them in my retirement account for obvious reasons.
Mm.
And I think it's obvious anyways.
Yeah,
So,
it's obvious.
so for me,
Tax benefits.
the other thing I'll point out, and I don't know how much time we have, so I won't get too far in the weeds. I secure my options in a way that almost nobody does. So an option can be recorded on public record. I don't do that.
Okay.
Instead, I record a mortgage that is the property owner pledges a mortgage securing the option. Do you have any idea why that makes sense?
Ooh, that's a good question. So they can't sell it without you being notified since it's a lien?
That's definitely one.
Okay. What's the other one?
If I record the option, they can't sell it without being notified either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But options have been missed by title searchers. I mean, it happens. Mortgages have been missed. Okay. There's title insurance in place to take care of this if it happens. Except if you had the option to buy my property and I sold it to somebody else, and then you find out after the closing is done, what are your odds of being able to come back and actually get that sale reversed and get the property that you wanted?
That's a great question.
Slim-
Probably
slim-
really tough. Yeah.
Slim to none, because that
Right.
third party that I sold it to, they didn't know. They didn't have any idea, most likely. So you're going to turn around and sue me because I sold the property and you had an option to buy it, and you're going to sue me and you're going to go after title insurance and you're going to get a money judgment, most likely. Well, you're in court, you're arguing over contract law, which means the judge or the magistrate has an opinion on what both parties meant in the contract.
Right.
That could go either way, right? And then you win a money judgment. That doesn't mean you get the money. You have to go collect the money judgment.
Yeah. And then there's attorney fees the entire way.
Absolutely. The asset is gone, so there's nothing to leverage against. Okay. Now, that's if you recorded the option or you just had the option on public record. Now, if you had the mortgage on public record and it gets missed and it gets sold, you still have a right to foreclose because that property was pledged as collateral. You absolutely can get the property back. The other side of that is if I just flat out refuse to sell you the property that you have an option on, okay, then foreclose. Force it.
Wow.
Take it away.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a pretty advanced strategy there. I like that.
And it's got some other.
And then what is the when you put the mortgage on there? What is it for $0 or do you just do like $100 or something or what?
I put the dollar amount of what my strike price would be, what my purchase price would be. That's what I put on the mortgage. But it's fun when you get the phone call from a bank or a title company and they call you and say, "Well, we see your mortgage. What's the payoff?" Well, gosh, who's trying to pay it off and why? So if they tell me they're trying to refinance, okay. I don't want them refinancing over and above my purchase price because now if I go to exercise and they can't pay off the remainder balance of that new mortgage, I'm in a bad position.
Right.
So we get that phone call. The other phone call we get is from the title company and say, "Well, no, they're selling the property to, Billy Bob, and we need to know what your payoff is." Oh, they're not selling the property to Billy Bob. Oh, no, they're not. Unless we do a little more renegotiating or I want to buy the property, it's my option, right? So the mortgage is extremely powerful, and mortgage or deed of trust, depending on your state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I love that. That's Well, shoot, that's been a lot of really good tips. One of the questions I like to kind of wrap with is if you could tell us what it takes to be successful as a creative real estate investor in 60 seconds or less, what would that be?
Get off your ass. Don't quit. Don't make excuses. Go get educated. The end.
That's a mic drop right there.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. It just takes the passion to get out there and truly want to solve people's problems. A lot of my teachers, my mentors, who are now some of my best friends, their information is all on one website. I don't know if you want me to give it out or not.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is for those that want to learn more. How I know you have an event and a book and all sorts of stuff that you do. So tell us about that.
So my friends, who I feel are some of the most creative deal structures in the country, are all at cashflowdepot.com. And Cashflow Depot is not a free site. It's cheap. It's like $10 a month or whatever it is. But anything you can think of that's creative is there. And it's, I mean, full on seminars, coaching calls, all this recorded stuff from some of the greats.
Cool.
So that's where I typically send people. Myself, we do host a conference once a year. It's probably going to happen before this actually airs, but it's called the Generations of Wealth. This year in February, it's going to be in Cancun, Mexico. And it was designed to be high-level education with a lot of networking. So we have a 5-day conference. Excuse me. We bring in non-selling speakers. We have presentations from 9 a.m. to 1 o'clock each day. And then it's networking the rest of the day through dinner. Come back in the evenings for some town hall sessions, which are more interactive. And that's where people really get to know each other and just grow those bonds, grow those relationships, find that person that kind of fills the void of what you're looking for, whether it's marketing or IT or the attorney or whatever, right? But the reason I'm really proud of it, and it's called Generations of Wealth for a reason, we encourage people to bring their kids. They don't pay anything to bring their kids. Their kids can sit in on any and all of the lectures they want. But I want my kids to build a network with other kids from around the country who have parents that are freaks like us.
I like that.
And I can tell you it's working. I have a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and they have friends from all over the place that they stay in touch with. They talk about business. They do little deals back and forth, little loans back and forth.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Play like cash flow game, Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, the adult version at 12, 13, 14 years old, you know? So that's, we'll have another one in 2024. It's GOWvoyage.com. And then kind of the last thing is I just had a book get published that I'm a part of. And I've got another book that I'm authoring that's going to be coming out hopefully soon. It's been delayed. But the book that just came out was a compilation book called Next Level Your Life. And kind of has a...
Yeah, looks good. I like it. Big blue and white cover.
Yes, sir. So this book was put out by a guy named Kyle Wilson. Kyle Wilson was Jim Rohn's business partner. If you've ever heard of Jim Rohn, pretty well known in the industry.
Classic personal development legend.
Yes, sir. So myself and about 35 other awesome authors all had a chapter in this book. I'd like to give away the electronic version to anybody that just shoots me an email and says, "Hey, I heard you on the Founders Club podcast." Shoot me an email to my direct email. My first name, Derek, DEREK, at bestreifunding.com, which is our lending company. Just say, "Hey, I heard you on the Founders Club show," and we'll shoot that out to you. So
awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate that. Guys, definitely go check out Derek's stuff. His events sound very cool. Very appreciative of you to give away the book. So definitely email him about that. If you guys have any questions, as always, put them in the box down below so we can circle back on those. And as usual, if you like money, you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the next one.